Najee Harris is now a brand new member of the LA Chargers. He signed a 1-year deal worth $9.5 million. He leaves Pittsburgh, who he started his career with. So far, he has pointed out how the Chargers' weight room is very nice, that it's not like that everywhere, which some people thought, all right, is he taking a dig at the Pittsburgh Steelers? Probably. And then he spoke with K-Cal yesterday about his experience in Pittsburgh, and it sounded like this.
It was just a team where, we lost Ben, we lost a lot of the O-line. We just didn't know anything on offense, really. We didn't have identity. We had a young guy coming out quarterback. I was young, the team was young, and I really didn't have nobody to almost learn from the offensive side. I think the veteran guy on that team was like a 2-3 year vet, and that's really nothing, you know what I mean? Like, he's still learning himself, and I'm coming in and, I'm just trying to look for people to pick their brain off of, and it was just defensive guys. So I'll go to the defensive guys to talk to them, but, it wouldn't be too much they could tell me about an offensive thing, you know what I mean? So it was an interesting year there, I'll just say that.
So Najee Harris looking back fondly on his time in Pittsburgh there.
Sounds like it, huh?
Yeah. Does it feel like there's more people that are willing to be critical lately of the Steelers and where they're at and how things are run there than maybe before?
Definitely seems like, it just seems like it's this, who was it saying? Was it Ben Roethlisberger who was saying that the culture was slowly being lost once Mike Tomlin took over? I think it was, I want to say it was Ben Roethlisberger, or someone said that at some point the culture in the locker room was gone, like the Steeler culture was gone. Now, I've asked Plexico about this, and I'll probably ask him again tomorrow, but there's clearly been a disconnect from what the Pittsburgh Steelers have been and what they've represented, culturally speaking, to where they are now. So, and obviously, to your point, I think the criticisms have gotten louder and they've gotten louder, and I think it's kind of like, have they been brushed off? Like, have listening to what maybe players have had to say, like, when the whole AB and Ben Roethlisberger thing was taking place, or, with some of the things that have taken place with Pickens, how things have been handled. People that have been in that locker room are saying that those things aren't being handled the same way when the culture was different. Like guys like Rod Woodson and Greg Lloyd, managed and governed the locker room, or, the way they did things with the families, or the way things were handled. I think there's just been a lot of conversation about how different things are, and I think it's been referenced as a culture loss. So I don't know, but it seems like there's more criticism being lobbed lately.
People make culture, and ultimately in sports, players make the culture of any team. A coach can try to do their best to come in and create an environment, but even within that environment, you can have a poisoned culture if you don't have the right people with the right character. And so I'm not saying that like this isn't like a Mike Tomlin thing, or it's not a Rooney family issue, but if they feel like there's a part of their culture that doesn't exist based on what it used to be, I can draw a couple of reasons of why that probably is. The NFL has changed drastically. We talked about this earlier in the week. What's been the identity of the Pittsburgh Steelers, especially when they had their reign of success? Like the Steel Curtain was a defensive-led team. They've had their phenomenal Hall of Fame NFL players on offense. But Pittsburgh is, and in my mind always will be, identified by the toughness, the physicality of their defense, the pressure that their defense can create. The NFL has continually moved in the direction of wanting to be more of an offensive league. And we talked about this earlier in regards to some of the rule changes, and LaVar, some of the things you touched on. The truth of the matter is there's a lot of defensive players who are frustrated because when there is a rule change, it's usually the defensive player that has to adjust their game. They're the ones getting fined. They're the ones that, if they don't implement the proper technique or proper teachings of whatever the change is, they're the ones that take fault to it. And so because of that, if you are a Pittsburgh Steelers fan and you look at the reign of success they had way back when, and then obviously Tomlin, when he came in, he was able to win a Super Bowl. Cowher was able to win a Super Bowl. But if you're really looking at like where things are going moving forward, one, they haven't found a quarterback. Basically, since Big Ben left, they haven't had really a guy. And that's been the biggest detriment to them. But also because when you talk about culture, like that's the guy that's also going to set the culture, who's going to be a part of that leadership group that determines what happens and what doesn't happen. And it feels like on the defensive side of the ball, they've had those guys. Like they've had those Cam Haywards, there's TJ Watts, whoever you want to point to. They have those guys. On offense, they haven't. And I think one of the things Najee was pointing out was how, they couldn't find a quarterback. There wasn't really a veteran on that side to learn from. The offensive line started to kind of move away as well. They lost that group. Yeah, when you're devoid of leadership on one side of the ball, it's hard for young players to come in and feel like they can learn, feel like they can improve and grow. But also feel like they have to conform to whatever that culture is. The defense can only do so much, whether that's on the field or off the field. And I think that's what you've seen with the Pittsburgh Steelers as the league has adapted and evolved, as this roster has adapted and evolved. They haven't been able to find those leaders from a player standpoint on the offensive side of the ball to be those guys to maintain that culture. At least that's how I see it.
In fact, if you're going to take it a step further, there have been personalities that have deteriorated from what the culture could be and how their actions play out. And there is it just doesn't seem like there's a checks and balance system that has always seemingly been a part of the Steelers team. Now, how true that is, I don't know, because I've never been in that locker room. I don't know, I don't know the culture that I hear about being spoken of. I just know I hold Mike Tomlin in very high regard. And I think he's a very respectable dude. That's always what I've known of him. It's always seemed to be what the overwhelming narrative is that surrounds him. But there also seems to be this other side of it that it is like kind of pokes its head up, or it kind of becomes things that are discussed. And I'm just wondering what's the other side of this, looking at what Coach Tomlin has been able to be as a coach and how he's received. What is there another side to all of this? Because it doesn't look like the Steelers are, in a way, it doesn't look like they're going in the right direction. And then, you have players and they have things to say. Players, more often than not, when they leave a team and they felt like they should have still been there, they don't always say nice things, the nicest things. But that what Najee Harris said, that's not him being disgruntled. It just sounds like he's saying what he saw and what his experience was. And if that's truly what it is, that's a tad bit damning, if you ask me.
Who's the star of the Steelers? It's Mike Tomlin.
I mean, he's the star of the Steelers.
Like where else in the NFL is the head coach the star of the team? Like when you think of the Steelers,
you think of Mike Tomlin.
And that's their identity right now. And the only other example
I will say this though, that's always been kind of Steeler culture though, because Bill Cowher was the star of the team. Chuck Noll was the star of the team.
You had Jerome Bettis and great players.
Well, you got great
Terry
players.
Bradshaw.
You got TJ Watt. You got guys that have been stars of this team. You have had stars throughout the years, but it's always been led by the stardom of the head coach. Like that has always been a staple of Pittsburgh. So I'm not going to make that like that's a thing for Mike Tomlin. Bill Cowher was the same. It was the same thing with Bill Cowher.
See, I look at it, I go, when you think of the Steelers, who do you think of first? Mike Tomlin. When you think of the Cowboys, who do you think of first? Jerry Jones.
Yeah.
And neither one of them.
But they had stars. Dallas has always had stars too.
But right now,
they all have stars.
If
actually,
the owner and the coach, are their most well-known members of the team, it just feels like that's a problem. Like that's.
I don't know,
shouldn't
man.
Be that way.
I don't know. I don't know how I feel about that one because again, like the Pittsburgh growing up Pittsburgh Steeler fan it's always been coach and then the players. It's always been that. Chuck Noll, it's always been Chuck. It was always Chuck Noll, and then when Bill, it was like, oh, Bill Cowher's taking over. What's going to happen now? And Bill Cowher became the same exact thing: hard nosed, tough dude, led the team. Okay, and the rest of the crew. So I think Mike Tomlin came in and he fit the mold and he fit the profile perfectly for what a Pittsburgh Steeler coach is supposed to be. So I won't attribute it to that. But I will say, when you come in and that's what you are with a franchise that's only had less than a handful of coaches throughout the entire history of the team, then you're talking about you're going to be measured and judged in the same vein and in the same manner of which those other coaches have been measured. And for what it's worth, at the end of Coach Cowher's career, it kind of was like the same thing that we're hearing right now that's kind of bubbling up on Mike Tomlin. You know, kind of like some of the same conversations that have bubbled up. So, and then eventually Bill Cowher stepped away, you know, but I don't know, man. It seems like there's fire though. It's not just smoke. I feel like there's something there in Pittsburgh. I just don't, I don't know what it is. I'm going to get to the bottom of it though.
Yeah.
I'm going to figure it out.
Flex. Who else is getting the call?
I'm going to call a couple people. No, I know a few people still.
All right.
I'm going to flex my Brady Quinn.
Yeah,
call my insiders.
He is well sourced.
Do you I don't know. Sometimes I feel like culture comes into question when you don't win. And early on in Mike Tomlin's, I mean, look, he's always won. You know, he's never had a losing season. But when they had Big Ben, which I think it's more the quarterback issue than anything else, especially in today's NFL. But when they had Big Ben, they were making it into the playoffs and making a little bit of a run. You know, you knew there was stuff going on with AB. You knew there was stuff going on with maybe some other players. I mean, hell, the Le'Veon Bell stuff.
Le'Veon Bell, yeah.
But it ultimately didn't really affect them to a certain degree. Maybe over time, that's become more of the issue. And also, I wonder, does Mike Tomlin run as tight of a ship as Najee Harris experienced at Alabama with Nick Saban? Probably not. Mind you, one of the best things that came out of this interview that Najee Harris did, by the way, was a story about him being recruited by Michigan, I believe, when Jim Harbaugh was there. And Jim Harbaugh came to his high school for one of his games, and he wanted to announce the homecoming queen. So Jim Harbaugh, out of nowhere, randomly, shows up to watch Najee Harris play a game. And it's Jim Harbaugh announcing the homecoming queen because he never done it before at Najee's high school. Like how random is that?
What, that was a bucket list for him?
I don't know. But it's like, wait, could you see Jim Harbaugh being like, yeah, I'll announce the homecoming queen. I've never done. That'd be amazing. That'd be the greatest thing in the world. I've never done this before. I'll definitely announce the homecoming queen. But like,
what?
Think about if you're a student. You're like, what the hell?
Oh,
why is Jim Harbaugh announcing our homecoming queen?
That's weird.
I love Jim Harbaugh.
Yeah,
I do too, man. I think he is one of the greatest personalities and football minds we've ever encountered. I mean, I hope he's going to donate his brain to be studied after it's all said and done. I really do.
Jeez.
It's
Thank you.
He's like the
He fascinates me, dude. Like, I've had enough conversations with him where I'm like, I don't know if this is a waste of my time or not, but I'm enjoying it. Like I'm enjoying the different roads we're driving down right now, the journey that we're on. That is a Jim Harbaugh production meeting phone call.